Right then, let's get ourselves going. So this is episode 14 of the Snatch Chat podcast. I am doing this solo this week. We've got no special guests after the last two episodes. So if you haven't listened to those, so episode 12, I was joined with one of my clients, a good friend as well, but he works within the sort of like the mental health realms. So he's a psychotherapist. So what we spoke about in that episode was not the fact that going to the gym and training is good for your mental health, but more about, yes, okay, we know that, but how do we actually carry on training when we feel like life is shit, mental health is poor? How do we sort of get into just going to the gym? That was like a really, really good episode. And I think it was really, really good because I tried to ask questions and like look at different avenues. What about if this is how we feel, or this is where I am right now, how do I sort of move forwards? And really the answer was the same for all different sort of aspects. And you look at your mental health very simple. You should look at your mental health very similar to how do you put a program together within the gym. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And then last episode, I was joined with another client of mine, Rachel, who's just sort of competed, not the weekend just gone, but the weekend before. So the end of Feb. What we sort of spoke about there is her journey through sort of different sports, finding weightlifting, getting the weightlifting bug, starting competitions, completing loads of different sort of competitions last year, finished on a bit of a rocky patch in the November comp to having a really, really good solid training block, executing her first comp this year at the end of Feb, and then qualifying for Europeans, and how we've sort of working together to put together the program moving forwards. So I think those two episodes have been absolutely fantastic. This is a solo podcast where we've got a Q&A, a bunch of questions that I'm going to sort of answer in a second. And then hopefully then a few more guests coming or lined up for the next couple of episodes where we're going to look at sort of different avenues that hopefully is going to help out the sort of the general person. Now, when I sort of set this up, if you listen to episode 1, what I didn't want to do was put together a podcast, put together a podcast where we're sort of talking about elite level lifters and what elite level lifters need to do to actually get better. I wanted to bring it right back down to like the very sort of basics. We are a bunch of people that really enjoy Olympic weightlifting. How do we make it accessible? And how do we get good at that sport, living a very busy life? And we've got the stresses from work to general life sort of stresses. So that's the things that I want to sort of look at over the sort of the next like few episodes, really. The one that I really, really want to sort of like get into is sort of like nutrition, but not looking at nutrition as like we are elite level lifters. We go to the gym, we come home, we sleep, we eat, we wake up and we train. How do we follow good nutrition when we are working a ridiculously long day? We haven't got time for meals. What do we do instead of, or how do we incorporate good nutrition into a busy, hectic, stressful life situation? And another area that I'm really sort of looking to sort of like delve into is like sleep hygiene. I think that's a massive thing right now, and I think that's going to be a really, really good topic. I know some of the lifters that I've sort of coached is that they go to bed they are wide awake, thinking of the sort of like the to-do list, the things that they've got the day after. These things probably sound sort of very superficial to some, but these are like what probably 90% of us are going to go through. And that's really the sort of the crux of this podcast. Yes, it's about weightlifting, but it's also sort of like, you know, improving the other aspects that will impact training and impact our weightlifting. But if we can improve other areas of our life, that's only going to make us better as individuals. So let's crack on with the podcast. I'd also just like to say, I might not be joined with a guest, but I am joined with a 7-Up pink lemonade. And I think this is, man, absolutely delicious. I brought a 6-pack of these on, I don't know, a day recently, and I've nearly drank all 6 of them because I just can't get enough. Before you go, he's going to be a diabetic before you know it. They are 0 sugar. So let's go. Question 1. What's the most common mistake you see in the jerk setup? Okay, the jerk, the split jerk. The biggest mistake that I see is, again, this is you know, a bit of a grey area because everyone's going to be slightly different. But I think a lot of people do not reset the front rack once they have completed the clean. So with the clean, we want to try and get those elbows as high as we possibly can. That's going to really help us create a solid front rack position. Keep the bar on the shoulders as we try and stand up out of the bottom of the clean. But we then keep, or some people will keep their elbows super high in the jerk setup. Now, this is fine for some people, but for the majority of us, if my elbow is right up here or nice and high in my jerk, as I go through the dip and drive, I have then got to drop my elbow to help me get into my lockout position. Okay. The other issue is having our elbows so high is as a person or as the athlete goes through a dip, 9 times out of 10 they sort of drop their elbows as they're getting ready to sort of press it because it feels so sort of alien being this high. So that's the biggest setup issue that I would find. What I would look to try and do is drop our elbows down so they're still in front of the shoulder, but they're not as high. But then that angle then is going to be a lot quicker to go from this position straight into my lockout. I've not got to drop my elbow to then find my long arm. I'm basically there once I then start to drop. So it's about getting into a fluid position the quickest and easiest way. So you're going to find probably 9 times out of 10, dropping the elbows is really going to help that position. Another common issue that I would see in the jerk is just standing with the bar. Now, this is something that one of my coaches really picked me up on, and it really sort of made a shit ton of sense. I was just standing here. Obviously, that's what you do before you go for the jerk. But he honed in on what my legs were doing. I had a really sort of like relaxed knee bend. Okay. Now, it wasn't like I was bending my legs, but I wasn't locked out. Now, what he was saying is that having that slight bend in our legs, we're losing sort of energy. My muscles are contracted. But if I locked my leg out, okay, that now allowed my quads to have a little bit of a breather. So my legs were sort of recovering, almost like putting a handbrake on the car. I'm not now trying to hold this position. I'm locked out. There's no movement. I am restoring my energy. So then as I start my dip, I've got more energy and force to generate through the dip and drive. So there's probably 2 areas that I would sort of really look at when you set up for a jerk. Question 2, what actually matters most in the first pull of the snatch? Okay, so first things first. So the first pull, if that doesn't sort of make sense to you, it's the movement from the floor to above the knee. Okay, that is what we call the first pull. Now, I think the issue is with calling it the first pull, we almost automatically think that we need to pull the bar off the floor. Okay, what we actually want to do is think about pushing away from the floor. So I'm taking the slack out the bar, I'm squeezing my shoulder blades, I'm finding a long, strong spine. But to start the movement, I'm not trying to pick the bar up, I'm trying to push my body away from the floor. As we sort of push the body away from the floor, the angle from hip to shoulder wants to stay the same until I get to my hang position. So both of these things here is about sort of holding patience off the floor. I'm not looking to try and drive hard. I'm not looking to try and get to maximal speed as fast as I can. All I'm looking to do is maintain my brace as I push and maintaining my angle, okay? So we've got to be patient within that first pull. Think of it like driving a car. You don't get in your car, go to gear 6 and expect to be at 80 miles an hour in a click of your fingers, unless you've got Batmobile, okay? What you'll do instead is you'll go through gear 1, gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, gear 5, and eventually gear 6. You're accelerating through those gears. And that's basically what needs to happen in the snatch. The first phase, or the first pull from floor to above the knee, is gear 1 and gear 2. It's going to be the slowest part of the lift. Now, when I say the slowest part of the lift, that is going to differ between person to person. When you're starting your Olympic lifting movements, you're going to want that to be a super slow. As you sort of progress through and your positions become a little bit automatic, you don't need to necessarily think about these positions, speed will increase in all these areas. But what you'll still find is that acceleration curve. You're still going to accelerate throughout that lift. Some who have been a little bit more experienced, a little bit more sort of understanding of the movement will be able to accelerate harder and still maintain angles, where others that are needing to learn and find that they're sort of pulling themselves out of position need to find that patience and slow that acceleration down to maintain sort of strong positions from that start. The first pull, or that first phase of the lift, in my opinion, is where it's like the domino effect. It's where you're going to find the issues that then have an impact on the rest of the lift, okay? If you are away from, or you haven't got very good extension, it's probably down to the start of the lift. It pulled out of line, the bar now is away from you, you're always having to chase your tail. So getting that first phase of the lift nailed is super, super important. Question 3, why do I round my spine coming out of the clean? Now, I don't know how you lift, but what I'm going to talk about is things that potentially are probably happening if you're finding that you're looking like a prawn coming out of a clean. First thing, the bar is dropping onto you. So you're using your arms through the extension. You're dropping a lot faster. The bar crashes onto you. You lose your brace. You round your shoulders and you're trying to stand up. Okay? That is probably the area what is causing you to feel rounded in the spine, okay? You might not necessarily be finding that you are pulling the bar, but what you have got is a timing, a turnover speed issue. You are dropping faster than the bar. Instead of thinking about dropping faster than the bar or beating the bar into the bottom position, we have got to look at meeting the bar. What you want to try and do is, as the bar reaches peak height, okay? So the peak height, when I say peak height, that means the height the bar is naturally going to get to. So as it gets to the top of that curve, it's then going to start to drop onto you. What we are looking to do is try and find that point where the bar is about to drop, get the bar into our position, and then we're sort of riding down into that bottom position. It's not about getting into the squat, waiting for the bar to crash onto you, to lose position, to stand up, okay? We need to try and meet the bar before we hit that bottom position, okay? So you'll probably find that you'll meet the bar just above parallel, and that is then when you're going to ride into that bottom position, okay? Right, next question. Do you need to be really strong to have a big snatch? Dear, calling it a snatch is just sounds wrong in so many ways, doesn't it? But no, do you need to be really strong to have a big snatch? No. If we're going to talk about numbers, I flipping hate it at times because it's different between person to person. But as a general rule of thumb, okay, you want to be able to, or you should be able to snatch 60% of your back squat, okay, as a general rule of thumb. Really, the thing that you need to look at before you start questioning your strength is your technique, okay? I can't stress that enough. I feel like sometimes we try and bypass or we stick plasters on the technique because we want it to be a strength issue, so we need to get stronger, when really it's about refining that technique. You probably will never be able to refine that technique enough. There'll be always somewhere to sort of work on. You'll work on 3 areas, and then this one area will start to fall apart. You'll fix this area, this technical fault here, and then you'll find another technical fault. And it is just the cycle of weightlifting technique. You'll never find a point when your whole technique is absolutely pinpoint perfect, and then it is like a strength issue. Strength being an issue, you know, obviously can be an issue, but it's probably going to be more of an issue as you become experienced within the weightlifting. It's never going to be within the sort of like the first year, in my opinion, where you're going to go, okay, it is a strength that's holding me back, okay? Unless you've had that, unless that is in terms of that you've gone to the gym, you've done general training before you've got into weightlifting. If you've never done any training before and you want to learn the Olympic lifts, there's probably an element of strength that you need, but it's more 50-50. It's not one of those where it's like, no, you can't Olympic lift because you can't back squat X amount, okay? So we need to work on that. You can still work on these movements and still look at building general strength. Hopefully, I've answered that question. I feel like I've sort of gone down a rabbit hole and tried to create it as a bigger problem than it actually is. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Right, what is the next question? What is the most misunderstood part of Olympic weightlifting? That's a good question. What's the most misunderstood part of Olympic weightlifting? Okay, I think the part that is misunderstood is that we know we need to move the bar from the floor to shoulders or from the floor to overhead, is that we end up trying to actually move the bar in itself. People in the snatch, they get the bar to the hips. They're not thinking about the dropping. They are thinking about taking that bar into that overhead position. We get to that mid-thigh in the clean. We're looking to try and get the bar to our shoulders. Instead, what we've really got to try and do is find ways to generate maximal power, pushing off the floor, actually utilizing the strongest muscles in our body. And if you don't know what they are, they're the legs. The legs are the strongest muscles in the body. We need to utilize them as much as we possibly can. So one thing I always say to lifters or the people that I coach is you've got to treat the Olympic lift, the snatch, the clean, the jerk, as a vertical jump. As that bar is passing my knee in my snatch and my clean, I am looking to push the bar into my body, into my hip crease for the snatch or top part of my thigh for the clean. I am looking to push that bar into my body and execute a vertical jump. The higher I jump, the higher the bar travels, giving me time to pull myself under that bar, under the bar, okay? You are never trying to pull the bar to the end position, okay? If you were gonna have a fight with the bar is always going to win. And you trying to muscle that bar and get it into certain positions is the thing that is going to hold you back all the time, okay? You have got to try and find ways to generate maximal force on the bar so you can move the body, okay? Next question. How to stop jumping forwards in the snatch. Okay, so if you're jumping forwards in the snatch, I would hazard a guess as that bar is coming past the knees, the heels are lifting, we're coming up onto the toes in the extension, it's becoming a very sort of toey movement, and I'm coming forwards. Okay, so the first thing you want to try and do, or a nice cue that sort of 9 times out of 10 fixes this, is when you think about jumping backwards. You won't jump backwards, but by you thinking about jumping backwards, you're naturally putting more weight through the centre of the foot, which prevents that sort of jump forwards. That's one thing that you can look at doing, is just thinking about jumping backwards. An exercise to help you do this, or help you focus on generating force upwards and not in front of you, is a no feet snatch. Start your feet in the end position, or where you would receive your overhead or your snatch or your overhead squat. Your feet would start there the whole way through and the feet wouldn't move. Okay, the heels can lift in extension, but you can't step those feet in or out. The feet have got to stay there. So think about jumping backwards. Start drilling no feet snatches to generate force vertically and not in front of you, and you should be able to prevent that jump forwards. Another thing is that line of doom. Just draw a line of chalk, draw a chalk line, nice straight line, start your toes on there and just try and stay on that line throughout the whole of the lift, okay? You don't need to try and reinvent the wheel to try and overcome this. We're just gonna try and find simple ways to try and fix that. Jumping backwards just reinforces pushing more weight to the midfoot, so you won't have, or you're less likely to have that sort of jump forwards. Next question. How much should someone realistically expect their snatch to improve each year? Again, this is like piston in the wind. This could literally go from, I don't know, a couple of kilo to 10, 20, 30 kilo. It all depends on your experience or your weightlifting age. Now, when I talk about weightlifting age, when did you start? If you started 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, you're going to see larger progress, okay? If you've been doing this now for a few years, you're probably finding that you're reaching that peak where that improvement is going to be a little bit slower, a kilo here and there. You might, or if you're making progress, kilo, a couple of kilo each year, that is a huge win. People that don't do weightlifting don't understand how much 1 kilo can make a huge freaking difference in between a successful and unsuccessful lift. One of my clients recently, she hasn't been doing weightlifting very long. She snatched 39 kilos. She wanted 40 kilos. The last couple of times we've attempted 40 kilos, she's failed it. Okay, and she's like, I don't understand this because it's literally 1 kilo. But 1 kilo, trying to catch a bar in that perfect position overhead makes a huge difference. Okay, so she finally hits 40 kilos. She goes to 41 kilos and failed that 41 kilo. Okay, I'm not talking about like months and weeks in between here. I'm literally talking about sort of a couple of weeks in between these sort of attempts. But all I'm trying to say here is a kilo makes a huge difference. A kilo makes a huge difference. We have got to start to really understand and think that adding a kilo to our snatch is massive. we should take that as a win. So if you've been doing this for, I don't know, 6 to 12 weeks, you're probably going to find that you're making larger strides. If you've been doing it up to 12 months, you might be looking at increasing by 5 to 10 kilos in that sort of next year, and then that will start to naturally decline. These numbers, I'm literally pissing in the wind, okay? I don't think anyone can say this is how much you should be sort of adding on. It is just a general rule of thumb, and everyone is going to be slightly different. Okay, if you could only use dumbbells as accessory-based movements, okay, yeah, so if you could only use dumbbells as accessory-based movements, what would you choose? So I'm going to use a squat movement. My squat movement would be a Cossack squat. Really hard unilateral lower body movement, which means that by going quite light, I can make it quite challenging for myself. It's a challenging movement. My second exercise would be something like I'm going to go with something like a one-arm dumbbell row. A one-arm dumbbell row. Yeah. Again, I quite like, in accessory-based movements, I quite like to sort of go unilateral or one-side base, a one-side base movement, just because I do think that weightlifting being such a static up-down movement, it's nice to sort of adjust things a little bit. So yeah, one-arm dumbbell row. And my next one would be something like a Z press. So a Z press, if you don't know it, you sit on the floor, legs out in front of you, dumbbells to the shoulders, pressing overhead. And the reason why I like this is that I think it's a challenging pressing movement, okay, being in that seated position. So it means that lifting heavy is harder, but I find that this really sort of forces you to find a perfect or a really strong upper back position to actually stabilize as you sort of press. So it's going to improve your mobility, as it's going to help it's going to help you improve your overhead mobility as you're trying to find range of movement in a awkward position being sat down. And so you're sort of killing two birds with one stone. You can get stronger overhead, you can improve your mobility overhead, and I think it's good at just sort of finding strong trunk stability as well. Being weak in the trunk is going to really make it hard to go overhead. So you're getting a little bit of a core workout, upper back workout, improve your mobility as you're trying to get stronger as well. So I think it's one of those that actually works a lot as areas all at once. Next question. What's one strength exercise that carries over most to the snatch? There's a lot of snatch questions, isn't there, dear? It's almost like everyone wants a massive snatch in 2016. 2026, my God, 2016. I don't even know why I said 2016. What was I doing in 2016? 2016? No, I would have been at university. God damn. Feels like ages ago. Okay, what's one strength exercise that carries over most to the snatch? That carries over to the most to the carrier. Get my words out. What's one strength exercise that carries over most to the snatch? Part of me that wants to say like snatch pull, but really that's only sort of drilling the pulling mechanics. Yeah, let's say a snatch pull. The reason why I want to say snatch pull is that you build confidence at slightly heavier weights. You can adjust that snatch pull as well. So depending on the area that you want to sort of develop in the snatch. So you might find that you sort of get to that hang position and you're lacking confidence. We can do pause snatches. We can look at going from the blocks and going from a block pull, okay? And working over our 1 rep max to actually build confidence in that section. If you're finding that your hips are shooting and the weight is coming away from the heels and you're coming into your toes in the first pull, you might look at floating snatch pull. So a floating snatch pull is the bar never sort of touches the floor, okay? If you are struggling to maintain positions, you might not do a snatch pull, but you might start looking at snatch grip deadlifts. And the snatch grip deadlifts, deficit snatch grip deadlifts, so you're generating more force in that bottom position and maintaining positions throughout. So snatch grip deadlift, snatch pulls are probably the biggest thing that I think is going to help you improve the snatch, but actually then, yeah, sort of carry over to the snatch as well. Right, next question. Where is that? How can someone self-coach their lifts if they don't have a coach? So there are a few things that you need to do. Number one, you need to expand your learning on what to look for, okay? It's not one of those where you watch loads of other people on YouTube, on Instagram, and try and copy their technique. It's about learning and understanding the Olympic lifting movement and then actually identifying what is holding you back in your lift. A little bit of a plug here. If you don't actually know what is holding you back, I have got the weightlifting checklist. So the weightlifting checklist is the British weightlifting key performance indicators. So it breaks down the positions and the areas that you want to sort of hit in each section of the lift. Okay. So as I said, the first pull earlier on in this podcast, it might well be the areas that we want to sort of hit when we reach extension and where we want to be in the bottom position. This then, you will complete the checklist and tick off the KPIs in each section of the movement. You will then find the area of the lift that you need to start to work on. So if that bar is coming away from you in that first pull, it will, or whatever, it might identify that you actually need to start looking at the first or the setup of that snatch. Okay, cutting extension short, that will then highlight a bunch of different movements that you can work on to actually improve that area. Okay, so it's the first thing you've got to do here is really understand what area of your lift is holding you back and why, and what does that actually mean, and the things then that you can do to try to fix it. The other things that you need to start to look at are your video. Sorry, the other things that you need to start doing is videoing your training. Videoing your training so you can analyze your movements in the session, okay, and start drilling the cues that you're focusing on, but then also look at your videos, between cycles to actually then try and dictate or create the path moving forwards. Okay, they're the biggest things here. Get better at understanding how you want to move, what you need to fix, and how you're going to fix it. And then start videoing your list so you can actually make sure that you're following what you've pointed out in that cycle. Okay, so why do lifters often miss, ready, snatches behind? Told you, honestly, everyone wants to improve their snatch. So missing a snatch behind. Okay, first things first, I don't always think missing a snatch behind is a bad thing. Sometimes if you've thrown the bar behind you in the snatch, you might have just put too much power on that bar that you actually needed for that weight, and that's caused the bar to go backwards. But there's a fine line now. If you are failing the bar backwards, is it because you've just got too much force, or are you chasing the bar? The bar has come away in the first pull, or you're a little bit more sort of parallel to the floor, so you've pulled your body out of line. The bar is now away from the thighs. I'm going to force it into my hips, which has caused me to extend backwards, okay? I'm then throwing myself forwards, and then I'm creating a lot of disturbance. I'm throwing myself backwards, trying to pull the bar. As I'm then bringing my chest forwards, I'm carrying it back, okay? So is it more of a positional issue that's happening from the floor that highlights that at that hang position, the bar is away from the body, you're then constantly changing it? I mentioned it in one of the other questions. The floor, the position from the floor dictates the rest of the movement. So you might be throwing that bar behind you, but what is the cause of that? Is it overpower, or is it something earlier on that then creates you to fall out of line? That means then you're chasing yourself through the rest of the lift. Right, next one. What's one mindset shift that helps lifters hit more PBs? What's one mindset shift that helps lifters hit more PBs? A mindset shift. I like that. You've got me speechless here. Okay, what's one mindset shift? What's one mindset shift? Oh, okay. I've got two. Big think went on there. First one is that the bar is going to be heavy. Stop telling yourself the bar is going to be light before a heavy lift, okay? I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's come from bodybuilding. I don't even know who that bodybuilder was. Was it Ronnie Coleman? Wait, baby! That is not going to help you when you've got a flipping heavy weight on the floor. It's a lightweight. As soon as you make that first initial pull, you go, oh shit, this is heavy. And you're out of it. What I would do, and literally what I started doing, I do it myself, is I tell myself, man, that's a big weight. And I get absolutely hyped at the fact that I'm going to throw myself underneath that heavy weight. God, this is heavy. This is big. This is like a big snatch. Come on, let's go for this big snatch. Throw yourself under that bar. And I'm hyping myself up to literally throw myself underneath that heavy bar. I'm giving myself that confidence. You've done the hard work to lift this weight. You know what you need to do. Push through the floor. Keep pushing through the floor. Don't lose it. Hold that tight position. And I'm literally being my biggest cheerleader before that lift. Okay? You are your worst enemy if you sit there going, lightweight, this is going to be easy. I've got this all day long. Pull your first pull. The weight feels heavy. You now shit yourself. The lift is over. That is the first thing. And now I forgot my second thing. What was the second thing? I did have two. I had two mindset shifts. That's the first one. Okay, yeah. My second mindset shift is that yes, the bar needs to go overhead, or yes to the shoulders. Forget about the bar and just think about the body. Okay? Forget the bar, think the body. Just think about jumping high. I'm not trying to move that bar. Forget about the bar and just think about what the body needs to do. Okay? Tell yourself it's heavy, hype yourself up, stop trying to move the bar and start moving the body. They're my two mindset shifts. And then the final question, if a lifter could fix just one thing in their clean tomorrow, what should it be? Start position. Okay. We have a really good theme for today's questions, but the start position. If the start position is out, it doesn't matter how good you are in the rest of the lift, you're never going to find those positions. Okay. I talk about it all the time. But the snatch, the clean, the split jerk are just big jigsaws. You always learn the Olympic lifting movements from a top-down approach. But when then you start the lift from the bottom and coming upwards, so from the floor upwards, you're always looking to try and find that previous position. So if you're rushing that first pull, you're not going to find that second phase. You're going to be out of the third phase. Doesn't matter then. The rest of the lift is over. So you've got to get really good, really strong, understanding where the body needs to be at the start and how to start that lift. Pushing through the floor, keeping those arms nice and long, maintaining strong angles and trying to find that perfect hang position. I find my perfect hang position. I then can generate that exact force that I know I need into extension. I'll nail the lift. It all starts from the floor. Okay? That's been, I actually have really enjoyed that podcast. I felt so flipping tired, about an hour ago. And I was like, come on, I need to do this. I need to do this podcast. And I was like, I'm so tired. I just want to, the sun is out. I just want to sit outside. But I'm buzzing. I think it's been really, really good. Some really good questions in there. And again, I don't know what happens, but I ask these questions to the guys that I coach. And then, they must all sit round and go, right, we're going to talk about the snatch. There's been a lot of snatch questions. But no, that has been awesome. So as I mentioned in there, about the weightlifting checklist. So if you don't actually know what you need to fix, the weightlifting checklist is going to highlight an area within the snatch, clean, split jerk that you need to start to work on. So it will give you areas to put your focus in when you go back into training. And then the other thing that I've just created, it's totally free, is a school community group. It's called the Optilift Performance Lab. Now, within the Optilift Performance Lab, I have created the weightlifting toolbox. This is literally a gold mine for anyone that is doing the Olympic lifting movements. There's 3 sections to the weightlifting toolbox. You've got the weightlifting foundations, okay? Grip position, overhead position, front rack, you name it, split jerk position. It gives you all the solid foundations that you need before then you go to phase 2, which is the building blocks, okay? And it's about mastering the perfect technique for the snatch, the clean, and the split jerk. Okay, we break it down into high hang movements, full lifts, where we need to be, and how we actually start to put the lifts together. So in there, I talk about the lifts of being jigsaws, and it's about knitting those pieces together. And then the final phase is looking at the common faults of the weightlifting movements. Bar crashing onto you in the clean that we spoke about today. Your power snatch is better than your snatch. All these areas, I have put together the cues and the drills that you need to actually overcome those areas. Literally, I shouldn't be giving the weightlifting toolbox out free, but it is. I'll link the group below. You are free to join that group. If you want to get good at weightlifting, if you want to stay shit, don't enter. But yeah, I'm looking at adding on more free courses within there as well. And obviously there's different opportunities to sort of send your videos in so you can actually sort of get feedback on your movements from myself. But yes, thank you very much for joining me in episode 14 of the Snatch Chat podcast. I shall see you in the next one. Make sure to like and subscribe.